DCT Audio. The art of good listening.
I'm just popping down to the corner shop.
Can you get some milk and take the dog with you?
The Corner Shop, where ordinary folk tell stories of anecdotes, folklore and legend.
So I'm with Kent Brooks, one of the guides for the Darfield Museum. We're in Darfield churchyard, looking at some of the wonderful stones that are in here. Ken, we're stood in front of one particular stone which has got quite a story to it.
This is the mortal remains of Robert Milthorpe. He died in 1826, aged 19. He lost his life by accident. The headstone fell on him and it killed him, and he's buried here in this plot. Alas, however frail this brittle clay, though formed with matchless art, death waits in ambush for his prey, and none escapes his dart.
That's what Ian Macmillan would write that.
Ian Macmillan tells it better than me.
So I know it's a bit of a funny story, but it is tragic at the same time, isn't it?
He were an apprentice stonemason, and it can't have just fallen on him. It can't have come off a wagon, of course, because this is 1826.
Yeah.
So there were no lorries about at the time.
It's listed, I believe, as well, isn't it?
It's a great two-listed headstone, yes. So it can't be built on.
No. Up ahead in the distance, we can see quite a large obelisk in the churchyard. What's that about, Ken?
It's the Lundil mining disaster of 1852. 189 men and boys were killed in this explosion. 146 of them are buried here in Darfield churchyard, beneath this obelisk. So that is to commemorate the Lundil disaster.
And I suppose there's going to be at least one generation, if not two generations, of people lost there.
I'm sure, yes, because the boys would be as young as 10 years old. I think that this was the time when the laws were changed to stop young people, going underground. Yeah, this was one of the disasters that changed the laws at that time.
Now we're just walking through the churchyard now. There's another headstone. Ebenezer Elliot. Ken, tell us a little bit about Ebenezer.
Ebenezer Elliot, known as the Corn Law Rhymer. He was born in Rotherham and went to Penistone Grammar School. He joined a Sheffield political union, but when they advocated violence, he left. And he was a really good poet, and he was against the government and the rich people at this time, the rich farmers who were increasing the price of bread. Ordinary people couldn't afford. So this is the poem he wrote. When wilt thou save the people, O God of mercy, when? Not kings and lords, but nations. Not thrones and crowns, but men. Flowers of thy heart, O God, are they. Let them not pass like weeds away. Their heritage a useless day. God save the people. He died aged 68 in 1849, and the Corn laws had been repealed in 1846. So he saw the Corn Laws repealed.
For those that don't know, what was the significance of that?
It was just the price of corn, and that increased the price of bread, so ordinary people couldn't afford to buy bread.
I suppose indirectly, he potentially saved a lot of people's lives.
He certainly did, yeah. And he's buried here in Darfield, and during the Second World War, all the wrought iron were taken from the walls and the gates for munitions in the army, in the forces. They never removed the wrought iron from around Ebenezer Elliot's grave.
Wow.
And it's still there today.
Just, I suppose, as a mark of respect.
I'm sure it must be a mark of respect. He was a frugal chap, throughout his life. And even when he died, he was still frugal. He were born in Rotherham. He lived in Great Houghton, a village just a couple of miles from Darfield here. But he's buried in Darfield churchyard. In Rotherham and Great Houghton, you had to pay to be buried. And at this time, 1849, in Darfield, it were free.
So even in death, he was still tight.
Still tight, even in death. His wife is also buried here with him.
You'd think he'd want to come here for a bit of peace and quiet, though, wouldn't you?
Well, it's a lovely place to be, isn't it, you know?
My name's Ian Macmillan. I describe myself as a writer, broadcaster, performer and man about town. My mum and dad met as pen pals. He was in the Navy, she was in the WAFs in the Second World War. So writing was important to them. My dad would sing all the time. He just never stopped singing. He didn't sing much, he didn't sing a wide variety of songs. He would sing Donald, Where's Your Trousers? That was one of his favourites. And Sandy Shaw's Puppet on a String. He loved them two songs. But he sang all the time. So there's always been that link for me between song and poetry and kind of what you call human endeavour. So my dad would sing all the time. He died on Christmas Day 2001 and he'd had a stroke and he wasn't very well. But I remember going to see him in hospital not long before he died and he could hardly talk, but he was still singing. You know, and you think, and that, yeah, so it's, for me, poetry just felt like a natural expression of speech. My Uncle Charlie couldn't read and write, but would tell these amazing stories. I used to play chess with him, but he thought it was called chest. Like, because round here, an odd dialect thing is they sometimes call the hearse, the funeral hearse, a hearse. And he said, I play chest. And he thought that any piece could move in any direction, take any other piece, and be replaced by household objects. So, this is true. You're playing chess, and he'd be just taking pieces all the time, and he'd get a boiled egg and swap it for king, or he'd get like a Pagoda Park Drive and swap them. That was magical. My Uncle Jack from Sheffield, what we call a deedar, because in Barnsley we talk like this. In Sheffield, because I love accents, in Sheffield it's much harder to do. Nardin, what are doing there, Dee? What dad? So we call them deedars. Right. So when Barnsley plays Sheffield Wednesday, we all shout deedar, deedar at them. But my Uncle Jack, again a storyteller, on Boxing Day, you go to his house, and he always had a joke ready. He'd have like a flower and squirt water at you, or he'd like have electric shake your hand. And one year, he got a rubber jam tart. Right. And he went, Nardin, would I like a jam tart? And my dad, a very innocent man, despite the fact he'd been it well. My dad bit this tart and he went, hey, Jack, it's a bit rubbery. And Jack went, that's because it's a rubbering. And that was him explaining gag. And then, for the next 10 years, we go to Uncle Jack's on Boxing Day and he get rubber jam tart again. And my dad would go, I hope he doesn't get the rubber jam tart. And me, Uncle Jack went, Nardin, you don't want a tart. And so it was just that. He was just surrounded by people just...
Sounds like Uncle Jack had a bad memory.
Uncle Jack, he was incredible. He was in the Second World War, like my dad, and he was at Western Desert, and he was sat exhausted on this sand dune, and the American General Mark Clark drove past in a jeep, and my Uncle Jack went, Nardin, and I that near Mark Clark. He says, I am that soldier. He says, well, fighting's other way. So Uncle Jack got arrested.
My name is Brian Marshall. I was born and bred in Darfield, lived nowhere else, 87 years ago. And my grandfather was Timothy Marshall. Probably a load of the villagers will remember him as being the village cobbler, which my father became the village cobbler, and I became the village cobbler. And I was the one that shut the shop. But the story I'm going to relate is the Darfield Judgment. Now, my father's eldest brother was called John, and my grandfather sent him to church on Ascension Day, and the law was that if your child went to church on Ascension Day, he didn't have to attend school for the rest of the day. And my grandfather and another Darfield father, which I can't remember his name, they were taken to court by the West Riding County Council. and prosecuted. Canon Sorby, who was the vicar or rector at Darfield, took up their case, arguing that it was law of the land. It went to the House of Lords, and it was ruled in Canon Sorby's, my grandfather's and my uncle's favour, and it became known as the Darfield judgment. There's a little sting in the tail, this story. John, who was the said boy, went to work at Houghton Main, like all the lads did in Darfield, and I believe he left school when he was like 13 or 14 or even younger than that, and he worked underground at Houghton Main as a pony leader. And one day the pony kicked him in the head and killed him.
Oh dear.
So all the work, really, that poor bloke never, you know, had the life he should have had.
Yeah.
And this judgment was, I don't think people realise just how important this judgment was.
Yeah, I don't know whether it's still valid or what. I suppose it will be. It was in canon law, I believe, which is a different law to the normal legal law. It's the church law.
But clearly it went to the House of Lords, so it's, you know, one of the highest courts of the land, isn't it? Houses of Parliament. Yeah. So what year would this have been?
Oh, I can't remember. Well, obviously it was before I was born. Yeah. I remember during the war, I was born in 1936, so I'd only be 3 when war broke out. And I think it'd been 1941 when Germany bombed Sheffield. And at that time, I lived with my parents, obviously, in mill houses, just below the old, what used to be now, the Station Inn or Station Hotel, which is now the Mumbai Rooms or something weird it's called. But it was always known as Debney's because the landlord's name was Debney. And it were a very popular pub. Now, the first night that they bombed Sheffield, I think it was Thursday night. They bombed it on Thursday night and Sunday night. The first time we sheltered in our cellar on Doncaster Road, born just below the Station Hotel. But the Sunday night, we sheltered in the cellars of Debney's pub, amongst the barrels. And I can remember walking from 100 yards from the house where we lived up to Debney's on a winter's December night, and I remember seeing shapes of planes, the silhouette of planes going over against the stars. I remember that, and also the sound of the German bombers, the monotonous noise that they used to make. And we sat amongst the barrels, and I can remember hearing the detonations of the bombs going off. I suppose there would be some odd ones, stray ones that dropped not far away, I suppose, but majority of them were Sheffield. And that's... But I always remember walking and looking up and seeing the silhouettes of bombers against the stars. So I was a member of the Barnsley Mountaineering Club, which it seems silly, landlocked mining town, Barnsley, having a mountaineering club. And it was formed in 1944. And then it really took off. whereas the people were coming from the forces after the war. I joined when I was 19, just after I'd be 20, after I came out of the Air Force doing my national service. And it was a mixture of walkers and some good skiers and rock climbers. And my interest was rock climbing. And there was a hardcore of about 10 of us. And believe it or not, I'm the only one left. We never had a fatality on the mountains. We all got home okay. But one by one, we've all met us end. Nobody killed, and I'm the only one that's left of the hardcore. And the club is still there, but it's a walking club now. There's no rock climbers amongst it or anything like that. We climbed. I never got to the Alps. I couldn't afford it. But I climbed Scotland, Wales, the Lake District, and obviously the Peak District, which was our playground. Yeah. And had some good times.
1958. Saturday morning, overtime shift at the coal mine. I came downstairs about 5 a.m, opened the front door, and there were 4 inches of snow on the floor. I shouted up to my dad. He were ill in bed. I shouted up, "Dad, there's 4 inches of snow on the floor," hoping he'd say, "Don't go." And he did. He said, "Don't go, lad." So I thought, well, I'll give him opportunity to confirm that. So I shouted up, "Oh, I'll be all right, Dad." And he shouted back, "OK, son." So I had to go to the pit.
But ultimately, your time in the pit came to an end, and there was a specific reason for that, wasn't there?
Yeah, it was 1968, Friday night, September, and I was walking home from the mine after I'd completed my shift. I was married now with 1 child, and you could almost see my house from the coal mine. I'm walking home across the recreation ground, locally known as the Wreck, and I'm about halfway across, and I hears this loud voice, "Ken, don't go back to the mine anymore." I ran home and told my wife, and I never went back to the mine anymore. I only went back to hand my notice in.
Now, when you told me this story and you heard this voice, there was nobody to be seen, was there?
There was absolutely nobody. I was in the middle of the recreation ground on my own. There were not another soul about.
And you heard it as clear as day?
As plain as I'm talking to you now, yes. It is a true story. Yeah.
And you never went back?
Never went back. No. So it must have been something serious that hit me.
My name is Liz Crowcroft, and I'd like to share some of my memories of growing up and living in Darfield with you. My mum and dad married in 1948. They both lived in Darfield then, but when they got married, they couldn't find a home to live in. So they rented a house in Thurnsker, just a few miles away. However, in 1952, when I was 3 and my sister was 1, they managed to buy a house back in Darfield. It was in an area called Darfield Bridge, and it was on Cliff Road. I found out years later that my mum wasn't too keen to move into Cliff Road, because in Thurnsker she had a bathroom. But what we did have, it was a tin bath, and it hung on the outside wall of the outside toilet across the yard next to the coal place. In the house, known as a 2 up, 2 down, we had a living kitchen with a Yorkshire range and a front room, and upstairs we had 2 bedrooms. No bathroom, but I'll come back to that. What I do remember about the area of Cliff Road and Churchview was a great sense of community. Everybody knew everybody. Everybody helped each other. The doors were always open. People were always chatting in and out of each other's houses. It was a lovely place to live. Daily life was simple then, but to us children, it always seemed like playtime. We played games in the street. We were never in, always outside, playing hopscotch or skipping games or I draw a snake on this man's back or kick a can, chasing games, making plays up, inviting the parents to come and watch us, singing shows and dancing shows. Such fun out in the fresh air. In the school holidays, families would get together and take anybody's children, with permission of course, out for the day, walking to the countryside, taking bottles of water and bread and butter and sandwiches. Such simple pleasures that we had. There was a lot of excitement in 1953 because of the coming coronation of the new young Queen, Queen Elizabeth. The Queen was the same age as my mum, and my mum always felt a certain affinity with the Queen. Everybody was excited for the coronation. My granddad bought us a television so we could watch it. It was a little bush television. I guess it had a 12-inch screen. It was very tiny, black and white, obviously, as they were then. There was great excitement in the neighbourhood because everybody planned to come into our house and watch it. I don't know how much my mum saw because she was busy brewing up and making cups of tea for everyone. We, the children, were all catered for because the mums and the dads had made us paper crowns so we could wear crowns for the day, and they brought old net curtains and oak sheets and things so we could have trains, and we could be very regal marching about the backyard, keeping our crowns still and not falling off. It was a fabulous day for everyone. As I said, a great sense of community. Bath night was always on a Sunday. It was a lovely night, though hard work, of course, to lift the tin bath in, clean it out, heat the water up on the fire or the boiler, but it was always cosy in front of the fire. A lovely cosy night. It was not so good when you had to go up to bed into freezing bedrooms with icy cold lino on the floor. My sister and I had a rag rug in the middle of our bedroom, and we perfected the skill of jumping out of bed and landing onto the rag rug, a warm landing. Bath nights turned into party nights with the arrival of a new family who moved in next door to us. Edna, the mum, would wait for the tin bath to be carried in. She'd give it 15 minutes, enough time to fill the bath, my sister and I being bathed and lifted out, and she'd march in with her family, all ready to go in the bath. "Well, I've brought these in," she said. "They may as well go in while you've got the water here." And in would go her children, and it'd be splash, 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 and it'd be laugh, laugh, laugh. When they came out, Edna would raise her arms and she'd say, "Queue here for bread and jam, queue here for bread and dripping." And mums would set about getting us our supper. Supper time was a nice time. It was a time where we'd tell each other stories, and we'd practice our nursery rhymes, and we'd practice our counting. After Sunday night bath night, Monday was wash day. I didn't like wash day at all. It was so steamy. Oh, it went on and on and on. And we didn't seem to get proper meals on wash day. We had to eat everything out of tins. I remember at my grandma's that she did all her washing outside in all weathers because she'd no room inside for the dolly tub, the mangle, the posser, the dolly pegs, the dolly legs, the scrubbing board, the tongs, all the dirty washing. Again, she had to be up early to light the fire to heat the water to fill the dolly tub by hand. She had 9 children, my dad being one of them, so there was always lots of washing. And this was sorted out into whites and coloureds, lots and lots of piles of washing, and she'd always finish off with the pit clothes. Grandad's pit clothes, my dad's pit clothes when he still lived there. I remember when she was doing the whites, she'd always pop a dolly blue bag into the final rinse of the whites. This was to disguise any hint of yellow from the soap or aging. It was hard work doing all that washing, and then, of course, they'd be drying and ironing for the rest of the week. I do remember that her preparation started on a Sunday when she darned and repaired any items that needed repairing. Make, do and mend, that's what it was. And as my dad always said, first up, best dressed. Well, you would with 9 children. On to school days. I was 4 years old when I went to Shrogshead, and I insisted on my very first day that now that I was a big schoolgirl, I could walk home all by myself at home time. And my mum let me. 4 years old. Of course, everybody walked then, so my mum would know that I'd just go along with the rest of the crowd and they'd all keep an eye on me. I remember the May Queen concerts at the infant school, the little shows we put on and the songs that we sang. I think about the songs now, very un-PC. In 1958, the River Dearne, running by Churchview and very near to my house, flooded, and we all got the river water into our houses. You can imagine that the children were standing on the doorsteps where they could say, "No school today, no school today." How wrong we were. The army came in a huge truck. They went to every house to ask if there were any children there and said they'd come to take us to school. And they lifted us shoulder high and took us out to the army lorry and trundled us up to school. That was an exciting day. Another memory from living on Cliff Road was watching something that I didn't really understand. Opposite our house was a cornfield, now a housing estate. And I remember that before the harvest, when the field was knee-high with corn, the women of the area, wearing white sheets around themselves, starting at the top of the field and running down, shouting and chanting something. It was such a sight. I remember asking what it was about, but I never got a straight answer. I think it was something to do with the autumn equinox. I wonder if anyone else remembers that.
My name's Dave Thomas, and I'm the producer of The Corner Shop. It's been wonderful to hear people's stories, and it's been a real labour of love for me. Perhaps the last words should go to Ken Brooks, who has written a sonnet especially for this podcast.
The Corner Shop. The off-licence. It was the corner shop. Here you could buy beer, wines, spirits, and pop. Where miners visited after a shift, and this always gave the miners a lift. And now the corner shop, it is no more, swallowed up by a supermarket store. Stories have been told of schools and churchyards, lots of poems written by local bards. A museum now fills the corner shop where we used to buy beer, wines, spirits, pop. We now buy tea, coffee and homemade cake to the museum that Morris did make. The small corner shop, a thing of the past, something that we could never have forecast.
DCT Audio. The art of good listening.